Neptunalia. Today is the second day of the Neptunalia, the festival dedicated to the Roman god of waters. He was brought to the Romans by the Greeks. The Greeks called him Poseidon, and specifically to the Greeks, he was the god of seawater, of salt water. To the ancient Romans, however, he was the god of all water, both salt and fresh water. And so the ancient Romans would come here and at the mid-time of summer, when the heat was most oppressive, when the concern of drought was so important. And they would celebrate the Neptunalia. And the Neptunalia is a 2-day-long festival upon which ancient Romans would gather for picnics, and they would build these huts or tabernacles. And it's actually been compared to a Jewish festival, Sukkot. And they would take refuge in these tents, essentially, from the heat, and they would often stay alongside rivers, and in fact, just tomorrow, and more specific to the people of Rome, we will be celebrating Furinalia, which is dedicated to the goddess Farina, who in her grove on the right side of the Tiber, she had a sacred spring. And so the Romans would pray to Farina much like they would today on the Neptunalia, by going to this spring, this sacred spring, and praying to this goddess of springs. And so this festival to us in Sandus is important because much like the ancient Romans, the concern of drought and the heat of summer is a concern, and it's an pressing concern, especially for where we are in Sandus. And because Neptune is the god of fresh water, of course it becomes apparent that not only does drought concern crops, but it concerns human life. And to the ancient Romans, this festival would actually be a good day to start irrigation work, to start work on aqueducts, and it would be not only for the security of the water for crops, but also the security of the water from the aqueducts. So it not only touches agricultural, but it also touches human needs, as does tomorrow for the sacred festival of Sacred Springs. We have a short prayer, much like how Lycurgus of Sparta would write it, short prayers. But to quickly end, before I go and read this 2-line prayer, this festival is also important because we have started work on Tellus, and right now our crops are growing right outside on the front porch of the Palazzo de Tato. And of course you wouldn't be able to tell this. Here in Sandus today it is much cooler. So to us that's auspicious and fortunate, especially whenever the god of water can cool down summer itself. So here's the prayer. It's very simple, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Mighty Neptune, your Triton held high, protect my garden in this season so dry. Keep your watch and keep your water flowing to every good root, and in your honor shall it render its fruit. so I botched that one up just a little bit. But happy Neptunalia, and to tomorrow, to the Ferinalia. One last word on the Ferinalia. The ancient Romans wouldn't celebrate it this way, but we are. The grove in which I was talking about, dedicated to the goddess Farina, Gaius Gracchus was killed in the grove to Farina. So we are beginning a tradition here in Sandus where instead of just focusing on water, we will also be focusing on the work of Gaius and Tiberius Gracchus in Rome. Gaius and Tiberius Gracchus were two aristocrats who were members of the Popularis faction in ancient Rome, and some of their reforms, both were assassinated by the aristocratic Senate, by the Optimates. But both of their work in the field of the Popularis was for land redistribution. And because we're socialist here in Sandus, we are honoring their memory many, many, many centuries later by celebrating their life and by researching all the deeds that they did and the reforms they proposed. And tomorrow we also recommend, I know that there is, I believe, a documentary from the BBC on them. There might be even an episode in the HBO series called Rome dedicated to them. So I recommend to everyone who watches this video before the Ferinalia or on the Ferinalia that they go and do some research about Gaius and Tiberius Gracchus, two senators who whose work was fortunate for the city of Rome, and by which the Senate began to lose a lot of power and legitimacy with the people of Rome. So with that, thank you for watching, and have a great Neptunalia and Ferinalia. Gracias, TVR.